Yes, sir. We got my boy LSU quarterback Jayden Daniels. And you already know I'm going to do a film session sometime this upcoming week. I mean, if you can't tell, I'm really excited, man. This is my dog right here. But today, we're here to talk about his strengths, his weaknesses, his team fit, his schematic fit, and also a lot of stats and advanced stats. And we're also going to talk about several comps that I've been seeing out there and which comp I think is the most realistic and close to him. We're going to do a full deep dive into Jayden Daniels, and basically my point of this video is to convince those of y'all that didn't prefer Jayden Daniels why you should be very happy about him being your franchise quarterback for the Washington Commanders for the foreseeable future, man. I'm super excited. Y'all do not understand. This guy is a playmaker. Again, a lot of y'all that may not be on the Jayden Daniels bandwagon yet, buckle up, because I'm telling you, you're going to jump on before it's too late. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned. I have y'all covered throughout the entire draft process. I know round one we just picked Jayden Daniels, but you never know. We may trade back up for another tackle. I'm going to have y'all covered for all of that. I'm going to make sure I do film sessions for every draft pick. I'm going to do a breakdown for every draft pick and a film session for every draft pick. Jayden Daniels specifically, we're going to do multiple film sessions for him, but just know that every player that the Washington Commanders take in this draft over the course of these next couple of days, first of all, I will be live streaming all of it, and also I will be doing at least 2 videos for each guy. A video breakdown, strengths, weaknesses, comps, all of that type of stuff, a bunch of stats, and then also film sessions for each guy as well, and even some notable and drafted free agents, so make sure you stay tuned. And of course, I'm live streaming round 1 right now, but make sure you pull up for rounds 2 and 3 tomorrow as in Friday, and also for at least minimum rounds 4 and 5 on Saturday. But without further ado, instead of wasting more of your time, let's get to why Jayden Daniels was the ultimate pick for the Washington Commanders, second overall. Adam. Well, first of all, thank goodness, because if you're looking at this graphic right here, it is time to finally hit on quarterback. Since 2018, Taylor Heinicke went 12-11-1. Alex Smith went 11-5. Dwayne Haskins went 3-10. Carson Wentz went 2-5. Kyle Allen 1-3. Case Keenum 1-7. Joe Johnson 1-2. Sam Howell 5-13, even though it looked like it was a really bright start to begin, but then it just went downhill. Colt McCoy 0-3. Mark Sanchez 0-1. Gilbert 0-1. Ryan Fitzpatrick 0-1. It is about time. All of those quarterbacks have been involved with the Commanders since just 2018. This is 6 years ago, y'all. This many quarterbacks. A lot of NFL teams have had the same one quarterback since 2018, going to playoffs, winning Super Bowls. We've been through 12 different quarterbacks since 2018, and the only 2 with a positive record are Taylor Heinicke, barely, and Alex Smith, which is a pretty decent record, but still fairly average, not that great. I'm so sick of it. I'm really hoping that we hit on quarterback this time. And now it's time to break down why I think we did. And let's start off with just some simple surface stats. Shouts out to @DrakeMayMVP on Twitter for this. Funny name, but he likes Jayden Daniels as well. He's happy with both, just like how I am, but I personally prefer Jayden Daniels. But he had this breakdown. Jayden Daniels had 3,812 passing yards, a 72.2 completion percentage, 40 passing touchdowns to only 4 interceptions, 1,134 rushing yards, and 10 rushing touchdowns. He led LSU's offense to 46.4 points per game. He had a Pro Football Focus grade of 94.7, 5.3 graded points away from perfection, which is literally impossible. He had an 8.4 big time throw rate, only a 1.6% turnover worthy play rate, and he led all quarterbacks in QBR last year with a 95.6. The person that was closest to him was Bo Nix in second place, a distant second at 91. Come on, dog. Like, I don't know what more you want. Also, shouts out to my dogs at the Tan Top Podcast for this one, because they brought up a great point. If LSU's defense, even though they were out there scoring 40-something points per game, if LSU's defense would have at least been good enough for LSU to reach the national championship, these are Jayden Daniels' projected numbers over the course of 15 games. 4,765 passing yards, 1,417 rushing yards, 49 passing touchdowns, 12 rushing touchdowns, 6,182 total yards, and 61 total touchdowns. That would have been the most yards ever in college football history if his defense please just don't be terrible. At least give me average. LSU's defense wasn't even average. Now moving on, also, as far as third down QBR goes, Jayden Daniels was third in the nation. We're not talking about just this QB class. We're talking about the entire nation. He was third in third down QBR with 92.6. He was third in fourth quarter QBR with a 95.4. And he was fourth in QBR versus top 25 teams out of all college football with an 88.3. So we're talking about level of competition. We're talking about money downs on third down. We're talking about fourth quarter when it's time to get clutch. He was at worst fourth out of all college football quarterbacks. Not just quarterbacks in this draft class, all of college football. That's including my dog Carson Beck, Jalen Milroe, all of the top quarterbacks that may even be going into the draft next draft. He's serious, man. I'm telling you, Jayden Daniels, and I'm not guaranteeing that he will necessarily be better than Caleb Williams, but I do want to show you some stats as to why you could argue that Jayden Daniels was at the very least better than Caleb Williams in 2023. When we're talking size, JD, as in Jayden Daniels, is 3 inches taller, only 5 pounds lighter. So all of the weight concerns, yeah, they're kind of there. He is a little bit lankier, but it's not that bad. Passing stats wise, he had more passing yards than Caleb Williams, 10 more touchdowns, and 1 less interception. Completion percentage wise, he was 4% better than Caleb Williams. QBR wise, he was a whole 13.2 points better. EPA wise, he was 52.2 points better. Sacks, Caleb Williams took 33 sacks. Jayden Daniels took 22. With all of that pressure to sack ratio stuff, we're going to get to that later. And then rushing stats wise, Caleb Williams had 136 yards, 11 rushing touchdowns with a 1.4 yards per carry. Jayden Daniels had 1,134 rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns, 1 less than Caleb Williams, but 8.4 yards per carry, which is 7 yards per carry better than Caleb Williams. And we're not done there. Also compared to Caleb Williams, when pressured, Jayden Daniels also has the higher passing grade and the lower pressure to sack percentage. Jayden Daniels had a 63 passing grade when pressured and a 20.2 pressure to sack percentage. Caleb Williams had a 38.9 passing grade when pressured and a 21.9 pressure to sack percentage. All worse than Jayden Daniels. And compared to all of college football in 2023 against the blitz specifically, Jayden Daniels was second in touchdown to interception ratio, 17 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. He was third in completion percentage at 71% and fourth in QBR at 94. Come on, stop playing with him. And traits wise, I have no idea why people keep saying that Jayden Daniels has a low ceiling. Yeah, he's a little older than Drake Maye, of course. Yeah, he's more pro day one ready right now than Drake Maye, but that does not mean that he doesn't necessarily have a very high ceiling as well. I know that Drake Maye has an arm ceiling specifically because of his ability to make throws off of one leg and off platform and different arm angles and things like that. But when did arm strength equate to 100% of a player's ceiling? What happened to Jayden Daniels' ability to run? People somehow just throw that out the window when we're talking about ceilings. Jayden Daniels, remember, is a top 3 running quarterback the day that he's drafted. He's up there with Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson the day he was drafted. Now, like officially as of today. Come on, we got to stop with that. Also, I can admit that Drake Maye can do some things that Jayden Daniels can never do throwing wise, but at the same time, Jayden Daniels can for sure do some things that Drake Maye can never do running wise. So I'm just not getting it. Yeah, Jayden Daniels has the higher floor and is maybe more day one ready than Drake Maye, but that does not mean that he just automatically doesn't have the higher ceiling as well. I don't know why, but for some reason people are making it seem like you gotta pick one. You either have the higher ceiling or you have the higher floor. You gotta pick one. And let's not forget that even though Drake Maye has a better off-platform arm strength, Jayden Daniels was literally the best deep ball thrower in all of college football last year, both eye test and statistically. Accuracy, timing, everything. So yeah, we could talk about Drake Maye's ceiling, and I still really like Drake Maye. I would have been happy with either one, but we gotta stop downplaying Jayden Daniels for his arm strength. I mean, he literally had the best deep ball in the class. Jayden had a 99.2 Pro Football Focus passing grade on throws 20 plus yards down the field. That's near perfection, only 0.8 away from perfection. That's insane, and no other quarterback was even close. And if you don't completely believe in Pro Football Focus, how about Jayden Daniels had a 63.6 completion percentage on those 20 plus yard throws, 33 out of 55, and that's also the highest out of any quarterback in this class as well, completion percentage wise. So we can talk about arm strength all we want, but what does it really even matter when he shows that he can hit all of the routes towards the sideline, like any out routes that you do, and most importantly, can hit the deep ball with elite timing and accuracy with guys that are running 4.3s like guys we have in Washington. We're going to get to that later about that whole knock against them having great receivers at the college level. We're going to get to that. Also, he was one of the most clutch players in all of college football, arguably the most clutch player in college football, especially the most clutch quarterback in 2023. Drake Maye ended the season on a pretty bad run. Again, I'm a big fan of Drake Maye, but Jayden Daniels only seemed to get better and better as the season went on. He played his best football late into the season, which is the opposite of what Drake Maye did. Jayden Daniels also had a lower turnover-worthy play percentage, but very close to Drake Maye. Jayden Daniels was 1.6%, Drake Maye was 1.9%, and Caleb Williams is all the way at a 3.6%. But mostly because of fumbles, not even necessarily interceptions. That boy just has a fumble problem. We'll get to that later as well. Also, Jayden Daniels, of course, has the deadliest legs in the class. You don't run for 1,134 yards, technically 1,250 yards if you take away sacks, and 10 touchdowns in the SEC just by accident or by pure luck. He also forced 101 missed tackles over the past 2 seasons. That's elite even amongst running backs, let alone quarterbacks. Also, more specifically, the hardest route to cover in the NFL is the slot fade. Coaches and players talk about it all of the time, how it's literally impossible to consistently deal with. No quarterback was better at hitting that route perfectly than Jayden Daniels in 2023. If we had to give everybody a superpower, Caleb Williams, off-script ability, Drake Maye, we can say like off-platform throws, elite arm potential or whatever. You can say Jayden Daniels' running ability, but also slot fade specifically. One of the hardest throws to throw, literally the hardest route to cover in the NFL. And for some odd reason, he's really elite and consistent at that. Very weird. That's something really difficult to be great at, and I'm glad he has it, because everything else that he may not necessarily be great at are easier to pick up and learn than that. So I'll take it. And then also, speaking of best, how about we just straight up say best quarterback in all of college football in 2023? Like, let's stop beating around the bush. I know we're trying to project for the NFL, which is why we're debating between Jayden Daniels, Drake Maye, and Caleb Williams as far as the draft goes. But there's absolutely no debate as to who was the best college quarterback this past season. Jayden Daniels led all of college football in QBR and total EPA with marks of 95.7 and 132.3 respectively. Bo Nix was the only other Power 5 quarterback with at least a 100 total EPA, and he still wasn't even close to Jayden Daniels, who again had a 132.3. And he was also responsible for 103 explosive plays this year. How do you cover him? How do you guard him? Also, he's a more efficient and trustworthy passer than Drake Maye is as of right now going to the NFL. Jayden by far misses less wide open receivers than Drake Maye. Now, I know he does miss his fair share of open receivers, especially if his footwork isn't 100% correct, but those absolutely just for no reason misses guys wide open. You don't have to necessarily worry about Jayden Daniels missing those, man. I mean, I love Drake Maye again, but boy, sometimes he throws the ball over receiver 10 yards, like where it would take 4 of him stacked up on top of each other to make the catch, or even sometimes throw it at their toes for some. Like, the inconsistency with the misses also scares me a little bit. I'm pretty sure Jayden Daniels would upset Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson way less than a Drake Maye would as rookies. We don't know necessarily down the line just yet, but as rookies, I mean, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson wide open, to not have to worry about a ball being sailed 10, 20 yards above their head is quite nice. Also, Jayden Daniels is a better fit for Cliff Kingsbury's offense that literally created opportunities for Kyle Murray to rip off 30-yard plus runs. Nobody else in this class is better at taking advantage of light boxes and getting big chunk runs out of it. I mean, just got to slide more, of course, but like Cliff Kingsbury defense is predicated on taking deep shots and forcing teams to really focus on taking away deep shots from the offense, so that opens the box up. They got to take safeties and even maybe some linebackers, even have a nickel cornerback because of it on the field, and they can't necessarily worry about what's happening underneath as much because you got to worry about these deep shots. And Cliff Kingsbury has literally mastered the art of having his quarterback take advantage of those light boxes and rip off ridiculous runs. Now, of course, Drake Maye is literally coming from an air raid system in college, which Cliff Kingsbury runs an extent of at the NFL level, but Jayden Daniels as a player outside of that, easily a better fit for Cliff Kingsbury in my opinion. Also, he's elite at hitting receivers in stride to maximize yak yardage right now as well. I mean, I love Drake Maye, but he wasn't out there throwing to 4-3 elite athlete guys. He just wasn't. And that's not necessarily his fault, but Jayden Daniels was. And if any quarterback I can trust the most, probably out of this entire draft class, to hit a 4-3 receiver in stride, whether it's a slant route, whether it's a slot fade, whether it's just a straight up go route, it's Jayden Daniels. And so Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson will also love him for that. And also, he's more difficult to game plan against, y'all. If you're a defensive coordinator, having to game plan for Jayden Daniels' traits is more frustrating than having to game plan against Drake Maye's, as especially right now. But I do admit that Maye's ceiling as a passer and underrated mobility, where a lot of people are downplaying Drake Maye's mobility, it could present a very similar level of frustration once he unlocks it all consistently enough to even matter. But speaking of frustrating the game plan against, first of all, Dan Quinn even... A lot of people have said about him, he's even said it himself, that a running quarterback is the scariest thing as a defensive-minded coach or even just a flat-out defensive coordinator. Jayden Daniels is literally that. But even beyond that, let's ignore the legs. Just completely ignore the legs. Daniels, when blitzed in 2023, he was 69 of 97, 71.1 completion percentage, 1,072 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions against the blitz. Now let's talk about when throwing against zone coverage in 2023. He was 121 out of 156, an even better completion percentage at 77.6%, 2,438 passing yards, 21 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. So what do? You can't blitz him and run man coverage. You can't run zone against him without worrying about his legs. I mean, you're trying to run zone so that everybody can have eyes on him just in case he runs off, because then he'll just dice you up with his ability to make pre-snap reads and quick processing after the snap. And going back to my point about Alabama's defense a little bit earlier, Jayden is also the easier projection going to the NFL level, because literally games like LSU versus Alabama, better supporting cast of course, but also most importantly versus a better defense, is the closest simulation you can get to the NFL possible in college football last year. Yeah, the NFL is completely different than college, of course, but the amount of talent in that LSU's receiving room versus the amount of talent in that Alabama's defense, and with how complicated Alabama's coverages are, even compared to a lot of NFL coverages, makes that LSU and Alabama game easily the closest game to an NFL feeling environment, and as far as having to make mid-game adjustments and having to read defenses, than any other game that any of these other top quarterbacks in this draft ever dealt with in 2023, especially between Drake Maye and Caleb Williams with the guys they played. Granted, they didn't have as good of supporting cast, but they also didn't have to go against anywhere near as good of defenses. And I'm telling you right now, shouts out to Logan Paulson because he did a great job breaking this down. I briefly just mentioned it a few seconds ago, but Alabama's defense is extremely complicated to quarterback against. Extremely. Logan Paulson brought up the fact that Alabama's defense is even more complicated than most NFL defenses. They'll show you one thing pre-snap and then switch to something completely different post-snap. So come on, man. Jayden Daniels went against that defense, adjusted mid-game, and passed with flying colors until he got knocked out of the game with a targeting hit penalty. And also, I hate how people use the fact that he had really good receivers as a knock against him in the draft process. Those receivers benefited just as much from having JD as their quarterback as JD benefited from having those guys as his receivers. I hate that. And even sticking with those great receivers, I felt like this would only be a valid point talking about how he played with such great receivers if we didn't have Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson and what I believe is going to end up being a really good receiving group after this draft. Then and only then I can see people saying, well, how will he adapt when he doesn't have great receivers? Well, thank goodness we don't have to find out, because we so happen to have at least one top 15 receiver. I guess you can probably comp him to Malik Neighbors if you really want to. Also, even if you think Maye can be better maybe like 2 years down the road, there's no way other than injury risk that people think that Jayden isn't at the very least a better option at winning games right now and giving us our best chance to pull what the Texans did in 2023 in his rookie year, going from second overall pick after taking CJ Stroud and then winning the division and even winning a playoff game. Which goes back to Jayden having the higher floor, in my opinion, with a lot of it having to do with his legs, of course, and his ability to not miss open receivers, missing the layups, again, like Drake Maye tends to do. Also, going back to being the best quarterback in 2023, Jayden also did not have a single bad game in 2023. And we can point to Caleb Williams versus Notre Dame. We can point to Drake Maye versus like 3 games, Clemson, Virginia, NC State. Neither of those defenses are even that good. And again, Jayden Daniels didn't have a single bad game. So we're talking about consistency and a guy that you can depend on to go out there and at least do his thing every game. I think your safest bet is Jayden Daniels, especially between him and Drake Maye. Also, going back to consistency, he's less volatile and more consistent, going back to how Jayden Daniels misses way less layups, which leads me to the point that his bust potential is way smaller than a Drake Maye. I feel like outside of injuries, Jayden Daniels is going to be a really good quarterback, point blank period. Also, Jayden Daniels, to be really petty and really nitpicky, Jayden Daniels has the quicker and better release than a Drake Maye, if you really want to get down to it. And also, going back to the point that I brought up earlier, Jayden Daniels has shown me the ability to adjust what a defense is trying to do more often than Maye did. Now, granted, this is something that's very difficult to analyze, because who knows if LSU's offensive coordinator was telling Daniels to make some of these adjustments mid-game. And even on top of that, maybe Maye's made some adjustments that I just simply didn't pick up on while watching his film. So I want to be fair and acknowledge that, but from my view, Jayden has seemed to do that a lot more. But I wouldn't put too much stock into it for the 2 reasons I've already stated. But hey, man, you never know. And even Dan Quinn went out of his way when asked about both top quarterbacks between Jayden Daniels and Drake Maye, and he was like, basically praised them. Give me whatever you like the most about him. He specifically said about Jayden Daniels, his ability to be a very quick processor and to adapt to games mid-game and figure out, okay, a defense is giving me this, that's what I'm going to take. They're trying to do this, so I'm going to do this to counter it. He literally specifically pointed that out about Jayden Daniels alone. Also, even when we're talking about injury risk, remember that runner Lamar Jackson was healthy all year, including a few playoff games, and I guess you could say Drake Maye's ceiling comp, potentially Justin Herbert, missed the last 4 games of the 2023 season. Running quarterback does not automatically mean quarterback missing more games due to injuries. But Jayden definitely has to stop that getting killed fighting for 3 more yards thing that he does. But I just want to let you know that a running quarterback does not automatically mean that they're going to be hurt more often. On the Justin Fields side of things, it does. On the Lamar Jackson side of things, it does not. Hopefully, he steers closer towards Lamar Jackson as far as avoiding taking big unnecessary hits. Also, Jayden Daniels is money on third downs. LSU under Jayden Daniels was second in the entire country in third down conversion rate. Come on now. Like, what more can you want? Also, can we please stop comparing Jayden Daniels to RG3? Completely different quarterbacks. Even just passing the ball wise alone. Like, completely different. RG3 was literally a running quarterback. Jayden Daniels is a quarterback that can just so happen to run very well, but he's a pocket passer first. I also want to point out the fact that Jayden Daniels being a 5th-year senior isn't as much of a negative as a lot of people make it out to be. Remember, Tom Brady, Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, and Baker Mayfield were all fifth-year seniors entering the drafts. So I wouldn't worry about that anywhere near as much as people hype it up to be. Also, a few more positive traits. He's great at manipulating defenses with his eyes. He'll look one way to move the coverage that way and then come back knowing that he's going to have a receiver open this way and throw it that way. Safety completely out of the play because of it. He also has better pocket presence than college quarterbacks normally have coming out of the draft. Still some improvement that he needs to do there, but it's definitely better than most college quarterbacks have coming out of the draft. He also shows the ability and willingness to throw over the middle of the field. I don't know where this narrative came from that says Jayden Daniels can't and doesn't throw over the middle of the field and doesn't want to, is afraid to, or whatever. Now, of course, at the NFL level, it would be nice to see him do it more often, but I don't think there's a fear that a lot of quarterbacks have. And even if he didn't throw over the middle of the field, Russell Wilson has literally gone to a Super Bowl and won another Super Bowl and been an elite quarterback, completely avoiding throwing over the middle of the field. I can honestly see a Russell Wilson comp for him, using his legs just basically faster, but his best trait is his legs, and then arguably his deep ball. Those are like his two top traits right there. That's literally Jayden Daniels, his deep ball and his legs. And I feel like Jayden Daniels it throws over the field way more often than Russell Wilson even does at the NFL level, let alone Jayden Daniels at the college level. So I guess you could say a higher ceiling Russell Wilson if you even want to give that comp in that way, especially throwing the ball over the middle of the field wise. Jayden also shows that he could do pre-snap reads and take advantage of what the defense is showing them pre-snap as well. And I still think Caleb Williams is going to be a great quarterback, but Jayden Daniels doesn't fumble like Caleb Williams at all, nor does Drake Maye. Neither of those guys have the fumble problem that Caleb Williams has. That is a very serious problem that Caleb Williams is going to have to fix when he gets to the NFL level that Jayden Daniels doesn't have to. But now, of course, he's not perfect. So here's some of the concerns that I have, and I've already kind of like briefly mentioned a couple of them. But number one, he has to learn how to avoid taking those hits that he's been taking. I mean, he literally looked like he was getting hit by a giant Looney Tunes mallet at times. It literally looks cartoonish at times. But as much as he's even talked about avoiding hits this offseason in interviews, I know for a fact he's been talked to and asked about it a million times from different teams, coaches, general managers, scouts, and things like that. And I also feel like the situation where his defense was giving up 28 points per game in 2023, which ranked 82nd out of 133 teams in all of college football, I feel like that caused him to do that quite a bit. Like, I feel like he was doing hero ball stuff. He knew going into every game that he had to score at least 30 points every game he went into just to have a chance. And I think a lot of the stupid hits he took was from him playing hero ball. We excuse Drake Maye and Caleb Williams' hero ball plays and mistakes because their teams were trash, because their hero ball mistakes were passing the ball wise. But we completely ignore how Jayden Daniels was doing hero ball stuff through his legs instead. And I'm confident that he will eliminate that from his game because he's shown the ability to get out of bounds and even slide correctly and safely, which RG3 never did. He would slide and hit the back of his head on the field. It was crazy. So he just needs to do it more often, but he's shown us that he can do it. And also, that pressure to sack rate is a little scary. Quarterbacks with high pressure to sack rates, especially as high as Jayden Daniels, tend to fail at the NFL level. That was the main stat that was working against Sam Howell this last year. But at the same time, I feel like the stat is taken entirely too out of context. Shouts out to DC Sports Experience for this one. Because pressure to sack rate for 2023 season specifically, just 2023, Jayden Daniels had a 20.2, greatly improved from 2022. His overall career pressure to sack rate is terrible. But 2023 alone, he had a 20.2. Drake Maye had a 19.2. It's not that big of a difference. And then even self-pressure percentage, where you're the reason that you got pressured, not even the offensive line. And this is from their entire college careers because DC Sports Experience said that he couldn't find just 2023 isolated and alone for this one. Drake Maye had a 24% to Jayden Daniels' 19%. So Jayden Daniels was better at that than Drake Maye as far as avoiding pressure. So yeah, maybe it's a concern, but it's nowhere near as bad as people act like it is. I don't know why we keep referring to his pressure to sack rate and we bring up his entire college career. I don't know. Why don't we just focus on what he did in 2023? Because he's a completely different quarterback this year than he ever was any year previous. Now, of course, that's also another concern that maybe some people say maybe he's just a flash in the pan. Maybe this isn't who he is. Maybe he's just lucky. I completely disagree, but it is what it is. But again, he's right there with Drake Maye in 2023, specifically pressure to sack percentage. And Drake Maye is even more likely to get himself pressured rather than the offensive line than Jayden Daniels is. Drake Maye is just better at taking pressure and maybe breaking the tackle because he's stronger and then making a play after that, or maybe just throwing the ball while getting pressured because of his size and things like that. Outside of that, I'm not worried about Jayden Daniels at all. And then lastly, and it's not really a concern for him specifically, but people need to stop comparing him to Lamar Jackson, dog, for real. Definitely different types of players in my opinion, but at the same time, Dan Brugler brings up a great point. He said, quote, when evaluating the quarterback position, NFL teams focus on the ability to create explosive plays, and Daniels accounted for a remarkable 90 plays of 20 plus yards in 2023. As a passer, Daniels has balanced feet and uncoils with a rapid release to layer throws to all three levels, doing his best work on deep throws, slot fades, posts, all of that, the most difficult routes to throw. With his poise and athletic instincts, he can buy time, assess different platforms, or create explosive runs. He must do a better job, however, preserving his lean body instead of trying to prove how tough he is as a finisher. It isn't meant to be apples to apples as far as comparisons go, but Daniels forces opponents to defend him like a Lamar Jackson. And unquote, that's the only Lamar Jackson comparison I want to hear ever. That's as close as it gets. I love Lamar Jackson. I love Jayden Daniels. They are not the same player to me. And now before we get up out of here, because I'm so excited about the quarterback we just got, man. I've seen a lot of different comps out there. I've seen a lot of people say Randall Cunningham. I really like that comp. Again, I've seen Lamar Jackson. I disagree there, but if you're trying to break it down from the Dan Brugler point of view, I can see that based on how defenses have to game plan for them. Maybe I can see that. But I personally feel like his most accurate comp is a faster, deep ball, better throwing, better going through his progressions and reading defenses version of Oklahoma Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts can just take more hits. He's a little bit stronger. Outside of that, Jayden Daniels is literally better in every way coming out of college, which is why Jalen Hurts went in the second round and Jayden Daniels is projected to go second overall in that second round. And even though I don't necessarily agree, Bruce Feldman talked about how a college football coach told him that Jayden Daniels is literally Patrick Mahomes, compared him to Patrick Mahomes. Again, I disagree, but the quote says, quote, I tell people this, outside of Patrick Mahomes, I haven't coached against anyone like this. He's just very hard to defend. We tried to force him to run it, to take it out of his hands. The throws he makes and the timing he has, I thought it was second to none. He throws the deep ball extremely accurately, unquote. So there you go. Apparently, college football coaches feel like he's literally Patrick Mahomes. Again, I wouldn't go that far, but hey, man, y'all gonna stop playing about Jayden Daniels' ceiling like I talked about earlier. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in the video and the fact that we got LSU quarterback Jayden Daniels to be the face of our franchise moving forward. Let me know how you feel about all of that, of course. Please let me know how you feel about all of the points I brought up, like strengths, weaknesses, comps, all of the stats I brought up as well. Please let me know how you feel about everything discussed in the video. I'm super excited. Let me know if you love the pick, or even if you were a person that didn't prefer Jayden Daniels, are you willing to get behind him now that he's officially our franchise quarterback, and now you can sort of be a little bit more glass half full, especially after watching this video and my breakdown of them. Let me know all of that in the comment section. I really appreciate y'all. I got to get back to this live stream, even though y'all are probably wondering how am I live streaming and still putting this video out. Don't worry about it. Magic. You know what I'm saying? I do my thing. Sometimes I have a body double. You ain't know I had a twin out there. But either way, man, make sure you stay tuned because I have y'all covered with everything draft, everything Commanders. Stay tuned. Film session on the way for Jayden Daniels in a few days as well, so stay tuned for that. Really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out, man.